This episode of Around the Oval is brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. Hey, Ohio State fans, Alex Gleitman back with another edition of Around the Oval brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. It is National Championship weekend. Ohio State and Alabama will face off on Monday evening from Miami, Florida, Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens. And to preview the game, we bring on Michael Casagrande from AL.com. He covers Alabama for AL.com. Michael, thanks for joining the show today. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us and break down Alabama.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So, Alabama, obviously, I think, look, any year that they go undefeated and are in the national championship game is not a surprise at this point. I think in Nick Saban's 13 years, he's never gone more than 3 years without winning a national title. This is actually year 3, so it really shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. But I think there were some questions coming into the year. Could Mac Jones do what he needed to do and be the guy as a full-time starter for a full season to lead Alabama where they wanted to go after obviously Tua left the program and is now with the Miami Dolphins. So, I feel kind of stupid asking you this, but did Alabama's season go as you expected it to? Did anything go differently than you thought? Now that we're sitting here with them in the national championship game as an undefeated team, I guess we'd just love to hear your thoughts on how this team either met, exceeded, didn't meet your expectations coming into the year.
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't be terribly surprising to say that they got here. I guess the way they did it might be a little bit more surprising. I mean, I don't know if people saw Mac Jones having the dominant season that he did. And the talk about Bryce Young coming in, and I was among those who thought that there was a chance that he could have overtaken the job at a certain point. But the way he did it, the way Devontae Smith had the season he did, I mean, he's always been a great player. He just kind of took it to another level. There were points in the season where defensively they looked like they were going to be much more of a liability. I don't know if everything is solved, but they've played better. I also think there was a benefit of the SEC not being an SEC West not being as strong this year. Auburn, LSU teams that are kind of usually the teams that have beaten them in recent years were not much of a challenge, at all in LSU's case. So there was a combination of factors, but I think it's hard to bet against them, especially with the way the amount of offensive talent they had returning, to bet against them getting to this point at least. I think this is kind of probably where we saw them ending up in the championship game.
Yeah, for sure. I'd agree. And you mentioned the defense. That's a unit that did not look really good early on. They gave up 40-something points to Ole Miss. And I think after that game, people were saying, well, Alabama's defense is going to be a liability. But they've actually been pretty good since. And look, I mean, I think you look at the schedule and there's not teams that are putting up offensive fireworks, but they played really well against those teams. They did what they were supposed to do. Obviously, gave up quite a few amount of points to Florida. I think part of that might have been just scheme when they kind of had the game in control late. But in your opinion, is Alabama's production on the defensive side of the ball, is it a product of them evolving as a team and actually getting better? Is it a product of playing a weaker schedule when it comes to offensive teams? How do you view this Alabama defense? Is it a mix of all those things? I would just love to hear your thoughts on the Tide's defensive unit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of those factors. Ole Miss kind of had the perfect storm for them that night, and it was kind of a cascading effect of one breakdown led to another, and just kind of became one of those disaster moments where everything that could have gone wrong kind of did. Against a coordinator who kind of knew, a former coordinator in Lane Kiffin who kind of knew how to push the button. So that was one thing. But yeah, I mean, the offenses weren't as potent as the season went on. Obviously, LSU diminished from what they were a year ago. Even Auburn, they're always a team that gives Alabama trouble with their different kind of offenses. They definitely weren't the same caliber this year. So I think it all played into it. And Florida was probably the best offense they'd seen, and they did more against them than those other teams. So it's a combination of them getting better, getting more experience with it. They're such a young secondary, so many new starters back there. So that was definitely a thing. But I think it's still it's not iron tight or airtight. There's still some issues with that team on the defensive side of the ball that a team like Ohio State, you know, definitely could expose, and I think will be, a high scoring game because of it.
Yeah, and I think everyone expects a high scoring game, especially with the way Alabama's offense has played. The interesting thing for me that you talked about Alabama's offense, the emergence of Devontae Smith, Mac Jones playing so well, but everyone forgets that they had Jaylen Waddle, who some felt was the most explosive player in college football, and he went down with what I believe I think it was an ankle injury, if I'm not mistaken. But how did the offense change when he went down?
Yeah, no, it's easy to forget that early in the season, the first few weeks, that the receiver receiving, getting Heisman chatter was Jaylen Waddle and not Devontae Smith. He's explosive. He's a different kind of a small guy who can catch the ball. Anywhere you throw it near him, can jump. Is we're one of the most explosive, fun players to watch. So yeah, without him, I mean, they kind of had to balance things a little bit more. There were guys like Jaleel Billingsley, the tight end, really rose up. Uh, hadn't caught a pass all year in the first half of the season, then kind of came on the second half as not like a 5-6 catch guy a game, but 2-3, several touchdowns. Is this not the traditional big body tight end, but kind of more the hybrid pass catcher, smaller, quicker tight end. So it moved around to him. Najee Harris got more looks in the passing game. He can line up out wide as well as coming out of the backfield. So they just had to mix it around a little bit more. To creativity to get the ball to Devontae Smith when there was obviously more attention placed on him. When you have him and Waddle on separate sides of the formation, it can make it difficult for a coordinator to decide how to defend them. So it'll be interesting to see if he's back out there, just how effective Waddle would be in this game.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the status on Jalen Waddle? To me, I find it hard. A guy who hadn't really been practicing up until maybe this week with the injury he had and the draft prospects he had, it's hard to see him playing in this game. But now I'm kind of getting the feeling that he is going to give it a go. I don't know, is he going to be a decoy? How many plays is he going to play? I mean, either way, they've got Ohio State thinking about it, right? Ohio State has to prepare for Jalen Waddle to potentially be in this game. What's your knowledge of his status, and how much do you expect him to play in this game?
Yeah, that's the big question. I think Nick Saban said yesterday it's kind of a game time decision, and at the very least, like you mentioned, I think having Ohio State commit time to the preparation, knowing that he could be out there, that's there's always information warfare in that sense played in moments like this. So that's always a possibility. It's a great mystery because it's one of those years where we're obviously not able to get the viewing periods or even be around the complex or see things. So we're being remote kind of takes away some of those intangible things, the things that the small observations you might get in a normal season that we're just kind of cut off from this year. So wish we had more information, but that's kind of where things stand.
Yeah, makes sense. It will be interesting to see how that one plays out. As far as other injury situations or status report for guys available for Alabama, we know about the center. Alabama's without their starting center. But is there any other injuries or guys that could miss this game that you know about?
Malachi Moore was starting defensive back who was not playing against Notre Dame. I guess he could have if they needed him. Uh, there hasn't been any updates on him this week, so I wouldn't. I think he would be out there if they needed him. But other than that, I don't know of any. I can think of Christian Harris was out for a little bit in that game, but he should be fine. So for the most part, they're doing pretty well on the injury front.
Got it. And now let's break down the game a little bit. Talk about the Alabama offense. What do they do well? What are some of their weaknesses, perhaps? And obviously, outside of Mac Jones and Devontae Smith, who are maybe some guys Ohio State fans should keep an eye on Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've kind of done what done it with the balance, being able to run the ball with Najee Harris throw the ball to, Devontae Smith, John Mitchie. They spread it around. Other tight ends, Miller Forrestal was kind of heavily involved early on in the game. Slade Bolden, who was kind of came in as Waddle's replacement as a slot guy. I think it's been their balance and their ability to spread the ball around and make it hard to focus on, the one guy has kind of been maybe their strength there. Their weaknesses, at times, I think for whatever reason, coming out in the third quarter after halftime, they've been kind of flat in third quarter possessions, first or second possession after halftime. I was tracking it for a while, but they've missed, they haven't scored a touchdown early in the third quarter in several weeks. And this is an offense that's leading the nation in scoring. So if that's a moment, at least a brief moment in time, they've struggled in the third quarter.
Yeah, it's interesting to see if Ohio State, if they're hanging around at halftime or it's, close game, whatever, if that's a pivotal period where either team, whether it's Alabama actually having more success at that time or Ohio State being able to capitalize on that, if that's going to impact the game at all. And, flip over to the defensive side of the ball again, what do they do well? Where are the weaknesses? Who are the guys to watch on this unit?
Yeah, no, it's not the kind of Alabama defense that they had for a few years there in 2016, 17 into 18 with a dominant front line with guys who were just dominating at the point of attack with the star linebackers. They have some good linebackers, young guys in the middle. Christian Harris is a sophomore, but he's a 2-year starter now. Dylan Moses is a senior, but he's hasn't been fully himself this year after injuring his knee last year in the preseason. So it's maybe not been as strong up the middle as it had been on the edges. You have a young guy, Will Anderson, who's going to be a star and has had some big moments this year as an edge rusher. But not the same dominant. There's no Quentin Williams type. Christian Barmore's done pretty well in pass rush situations, and they've done better getting after quarterbacks in the last few weeks from the defensive line standpoint. But just not the same kind of dominant edge there. Strengths. Obviously, Patrick Surtain's one of the better cornerbacks in the country. It's tough to throw at him. And Malachi Moore's where he come on as a true freshman, several interceptions. He's been, a bright spot and a young secondary that they've lost a lot to graduation to NFL in recent years. So that's kind of a weakness overall. The safeties have been somewhat of a weakness at times. So there've been some big plays they've been hit on. They try to keep things in front of them, but they're Florida hit a few big touchdowns. So if you can, obviously seeing what Ohio State did last week, they can hit that deep ball. If they can expose that might be someplace to try to hit on the back end.
Yeah, if Ohio State can't hit that deep ball, I don't know. I don't know how well they're going to do. Obviously, I think they're going to try to control the line of scrimmage and keep Trey Sermon rolling on the run he's been on. But I think I don't think anyone thinks this is going to be a 20-17 type of game. I think everyone thinks this is going to be a game that's at least in the 30s, if not in the 40s. And so, Ohio State's going to have to hit a few of those deep shots. Speaking of what each team needs to do to win, let's talk about that. For Alabama, what do you think are the keys to victory for the Crimson Tide?
Yeah, I think it's avoiding those big plays on defense and keeping Ohio State, obviously more contained than Clemson even came close to doing, allowing those 6 touchdown passes. But it's kind of thing where you figure their offense can move the ball. Alabama can move the ball on offense if they can, hold some field goals, hold Ohio State to field goals. They did a decent job at that at times with certain defenses, certain offenses. They would drive, but have to kick, a short field goal. They can, limit red zone trips to field goals instead of touchdowns. Because it kind of feels like a tennis match where you can hold serve a few times, a break serve, you can do some things. So I think that would probably be, even the case on either side of it.
Yeah, I was going to say for Ohio State, if you're Ryan Day, what are the things you think his team needs to do when that clock hits 0 to have one more point than Alabama, at least?
Yeah, getting after the quarterback, that's not many teams have been able to really get to Mac Jones very often. He's had time to pick people apart. That would be a good first step. But yeah, I mean, sometimes those few big plays can be the difference in a game if they can hit a few early, get Alabama on its heels. I think that's something that defensive coordinator Pete Golden said the other day. Is sometimes when they give up a few plays, they start pressing and they start trying to make bigger plays and try to overdo their jobs, and that's when things kind of spiral out of control like they did at Ole Miss. So being able to control that and stay within the moment, not have the not let a big play become 2-3 big plays. I think that would be a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. And last thing we're gonna go to here, put you on the spot a little bit. How do you think this game plays out? What type of game is it? How does it kind of go? What's the flow? And then who wins?
Yeah, I think it's going to be somewhere in the 40s, and I truly think you could flip a coin on this one. I know Alabama's a favorite; they're whatever 7.5 point favorite, but I I don't think it's going to be that easy. Not that a 7 point win's easy, but I think Ohio State could definitely win this game. I haven't made a real score prediction anywhere else. I haven't really got too deep into it at that point, but I think uh, somewhere between 5 and 7 points either way. I could see either team coming out of this game just with the way the weapons that both sides have.
Yeah, for me, I think you kind of said it before. I think it's I love your tennis example of can you break serve a few times or whatever it is. I think it's like who can get just enough defensive stops probably at the end of the day. Like, is it a key turnover at some point, or is it an intercept? Is it a 3 and out at a key spot where you could get the edge? Is it a stop someone on 4th down or hold them to field goals instead of touchdowns in the red zone? I just think it's like who could do enough of that to win. I think it's going to be, in my book, I'm seeing an 8-point spread right now. I think I like Ohio State with the 8 points. I don't know who I'm going to predict to win the game, but I think the line of about a touchdown and the over under about 75, calling like a 41-34 type game. I think that probably feels right. So I'll have my pick in the Buckeye Scoop staff picks when that comes out. I believe it will be Sunday or maybe even Monday morning. But I think we're in for a really good, entertaining game, no matter who comes out on top. So, Michael, thank you again for joining the show. Really appreciate it. Everyone, go give him a follow at by Casagrande. That's BYCASAGRANDE on Twitter. And go follow his work on AL.com. Mike, thanks again. Appreciate the time and enjoy the game on Monday.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This episode of Around the Oval was brought to you by Todd Pennington with Renovation Mortgage. If you've been thinking about refinancing or buying a house, check out our sponsor, Todd Pennington with Renovation Mortgage. They offer low rates for refinancing and home purchase loans, including first-time home buyer programs, down payment assistance, and cash-out home equity loans. Check out revolutionmortgage.com/tpennington.